Think about the honeymoon phase, the butterflies, the excitement, the extraordinary sex, the sense that nothing could go wrong. It's magical, isn't it? Love is not just a feeling, it's a choice. It's choosing to show up even when it's hard. When it comes to love, we've all been told stories. Fairy tales taught us to wait for the one. Movies showed us love conquering all, and somewhere along the way, we learned that happily ever after is guaranteed if you just find the right person. But what if those stories were wrong? Consider this. In 2023, global spending on Valentine's Day exceeded 21, and wait for it, billion pounds. In the UK alone, over 1.3 billion was spent celebrating love, yet marriage rates have fallen to their lowest on record. In 2020, there were 85,770 marriages in England and Wales, a 61% decrease from 2019, marking the lowest number since 1838. Meanwhile, younger generations are prioritising emotional health and personal growth over traditional milestones. Today, we're uncovering the myths that keep us stuck. Let's redefine what love really means and explore the one relationship that shapes them all, the one you have with yourself. This isn't about perfection, it's about truth, reflection, and embracing love in all its forms. So let's dive in. Hello again, and welcome to another episode of She with Ade, the One. We dive into extraordinary stories from ordinary women and sometimes extraordinary truths about life. Today we're talking about love. Not the kind we see in the movies where the ending is always tied up neatly in a bow, or the perfectly curated relationships we see on Instagram and say Facebook. We're talking about real love, messy love, love that grows and stretches and, quite frankly, sometimes hurts. Most importantly, I'd like to talk about how it's all rooted in the love that you have for your own self. So, grab a cup of tea or your favourite drink and let's unpack this together. The first myth that I'd like to talk about is the one that says love is blind. I mean, the idea that love is blind suggests that real love means overlooking flaws, red flags, or even harmful behaviours. But is that true? Take my friend Tolu. When she first met her previous partner, he was charming, attentive, and he seemed to adore her. He texted her constantly to check in, bought her gifts, expensive gifts, and she thought it was really sweet at first. But over time, his care turned into control. He questioned her every move, isolated her from her friends, made her feel guilty for prioritizing herself. She realized somewhat too late that she'd ignored the early signs of controlling behavior because she believed, well, love should overlook everything. Research from the journal Social Psychology Quarterly shows that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and trust, not denial. Dr. Sue Johnson puts it perfectly. Real love isn't blind. It's wide-eyed and intentional. My Nigerian people say, shine your eye, look well. It means don't ignore the obvious. Take your time to observe what's important and make good decisions. What about you? Have you ever ignored something in a relationship because you thought it was what love required? What did you learn from that experience? The second myth I'd like to address is the one that says the right person will complete you. This myth has been with us for generations. It tells us we're incomplete until we find the one. But let's revisit the Genesis account, often quoted in discussions of love, quoted in marriage ceremonies. I lose count of the number of times I've heard the phrase, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, but it doesn't mean one person is incomplete without the other. The Hebrew term "izakenegdo," and I hope I say that right, often translated as helper or helpmeet, is the same word that describes our God as a helper, guiding, supporting, and empowering us. In fact, Isa means warrior. It speaks of partnership, complementarity, and not dependency. Think of women like Malala Yousafzai, who champions education for girls globally, or Oprah Winfrey, who has built an empire of empowerment. They remind us that we're already whole and that we are capable of incredible things with or without a partner. What would you change in your life if you believed you were already whole? How would that shift the way you approach love? Another myth is romantic love lasts forever. Think about the honeymoon phase, the butterflies, the excitement, the extraordinary sex, the sense that nothing could go wrong. It's magical, isn't it? But the truth is, those intense emotions naturally evolve over time, and that's okay. I once met a couple celebrating their 30th anniversary. They admitted that they'd lost the initial spark, especially after raising kids and facing life's challenges. But instead of drifting apart, they decided to reconnect. They started writing gratitude notes to each other, cooking meals together, and even took salsa classes. Studies from the Gottman Institute reveal that couples who intentionally nurture their relationships through shared activities and open communication experience deeper levels of trust and satisfaction. What season of love are you in right now? How are you nurturing your connection? My fourth myth I'd like to address is the idea that great relationships don't have conflict, that the perfect couple never fights. Take Ben and Sarah. They used to argue over how to spend the weekends. Sarah loved hiking. Ben preferred a quiet night in. At one point, they avoided the topic entirely just to keep the peace. But they soon realized that suppressing conflict was hurting their connection more than the arguments themselves. They had to learn to listen without interrupting and to see conflict as an opportunity for growth. Dr. John Gottman, a renowned relationship researcher, says it's not the presence of conflict, but how couples handle it that predicts success. Healthy conflict resolution involves curiosity, compromise, and empathy. How do you navigate conflict in your relationships? Could it be an opportunity for growth instead of a sign of failure? Yet another myth says that marriage is the key to happiness. As someone of Yoruba heritage, I've seen how unmarried women are often unfairly judged. They're labelled as irresponsible, loose, undesirable, or somehow incomplete. But happiness doesn't come from a wedding ring. It comes from purpose and alignment. Many women live vibrant, fulfilling lives outside of marriage. Malala Yusuf, I can never say this, Yousafzai, a Nobel laureate, continues her tireless advocacy for girls' education. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the Nigerian activist, through her writing and activism, challenges societal norms. These women are proof that purpose and passion bring joy, not a marital status. Let's learn to be kind and lend our empathy to single women, many of whom have just not found the right person to settle down with, or who have lost a partner or escaped abusive relationships. Marriage can be a beautiful partnership, but it's not the sole path to fulfillment. Purpose and authenticity are the true foundations of a joyful life. What brings you joy and purpose, independent of your relationship status? Now, this one, jealousy. It's often romanticized as a sign of passion, but it's actually rooted in fear and in insecurity. And left unchecked, it can spiral into possessiveness and even abuse. Let's think about the phenomenon of love bombing, where a partner showers you with affection early on, creating a dependency. But over time, this affection turns into control. They may monitor your actions, isolate you from friends, or use guilt to manipulate you. And what starts as caring becomes, well, suffocating. Healthy love is built on trust and individuality. As Rupi Kaur writes, if you love yourself, you teach others to love you. If jealousy arises, ask yourself, is this love or is it fear? How can you foster true trust instead? I love this one, my number 7, that says you must have the same interests. The belief that couples must share every interest to be compatible. I mean, while shared hobbies can build connection, it's not realistic to expect perfect alignment in this regard. Take Sarah and Ben. Sarah loved hiking. Ben preferred movie marathons. They initially saw this as a problem, but later embraced it as an opportunity to expand their horizons. Sarah introduced Ben to nature walks, and Ben shared his favourite films. Their differences became a source of growth, not division. My own husband, Wale, and I are quite different individuals. I'm quite insular. I'm an introvert, despite what you see. I like the quietness of painting, of walking in nature, of reading a good book. And he's a lot more outgoing, a lot more organized. He loves to organize events for his friends and loves a good party. But we still share the same values, and that's our strength. He enjoys watching what I produce, what I write, what I paint, and I love to go with him to the occasional party, but not to every single one. What's one difference in your relationships that you can embrace as a strength? I'd like to share a moment of vulnerability here. There was a season in my marriage when I felt totally invisible. My husband was working tirelessly, pouring every ounce of himself into building his business. He was doing it for us, to build us a more secure future than his 9 to 5. But he was working all the hours he could, coming in the early hours as he tried to get his restaurant off the ground and into profit. I, on the other hand, was juggling the chaos of a demanding career and raising our children. On the surface, we were a team, functioning like a well-oiled machine, but emotionally, we were drifting miles apart. The weight of loneliness for me pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. I wondered if he'd even noticed how far apart we drifted, or if he cared. I sought validation from others in an unhealthy way. And one day it all fell through in a blazing row. That night wasn't a magical fix for everything, but it was the beginning of something new. We started carving out intentional time for each other. We listened, we forgave each other, we prayed together. It took some time, but no matter how busy our lives got, little gestures like sharing a cup of coffee in the morning and sitting in silence together at the end of the day, we began to rebuild the bridge we lost. There were apologies, there was forgiveness, there was prayer, and that season taught me an important truth. Love is not just a feeling, it's a choice. It's choosing to show up even when it's hard. It's choosing the other person even when it's difficult, choosing to communicate even when it's uncomfortable, and it's choosing to see each other even when life tries to pull you apart. For anyone listening who feels distant from a partner, I want you to know this. It's okay to feel hurt, even to feel unseen, but don't give up on reaching out. Vulnerability is the bridge that connects hearts, and it's worth every ounce of courage it takes to build it. I'd like to speak to the Millennial and Gen Z perspectives on love at this point. Millennials and Gen Z are rewriting the rules of love in many ways, and it's fascinating to observe. Many of them are delaying marriage or choosing cohabitation, and some are opting out of traditional relationships and long term partnerships altogether. Emotional health, self awareness, and personal growth are taking centre stage. But this shift isn't without its challenges. Dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge have created a culture where options feel endless, yet connections can feel fleeting. I've heard words like ghosting, breadcrumbing, and orbiting have entered the dating lexicon, describing behaviours where people are kept hanging on without commitment. And this emotional roller coaster can be exhausting and traumatic for those who seek genuine connection. Statistics back up this shift. According to a 2021 report by Pew Research, 50% of single adults in the US have tried dating apps, and while they create opportunities to meet new people, 45% of users report frustration with the lack of sincerity or meaningful outcomes. In the UK, 57% of 16 to 34-year-olds report preferring to prioritise career and financial stability over marriage in a 2023 survey by YouGov. There's something to learn here. While self-discovery is vital, relationships require vulnerability and effort. The balance lies in understanding oneself deeply while also taking the risk to invest in others. How do we approach love with both intention and openness? What would it mean for us to take the best of this generation's values while addressing their struggles? At the core of it all, to my mind, is self-love. It's at the heart of every relationship, that one that you have with yourself. Self-love isn't just a buzzword, my friend. It's the foundation of how we navigate life and connect with others. Without it, we chase validation, trying to fill a void with external approval. But with it, we set boundaries, embrace our worth, and attract healthier, more fulfilling relationships. I'd like to share something personal. For a long time, I struggled with self love. I would look in the mirror and struggle to say the words, I love you. It was required homework at one point in my counselling journey, but it felt awkward and almost ridiculous. That negative voice in my head was relentless. You're not enough. You'll never succeed. Who the hell do you think you are? Why even try? It took time, intentional effort, and a lot of grace to change that narrative. But let me tell you, it's possible. Self love isn't about being perfect, it's about being kind to yourself in the imperfection. It's about seeing your flaws and your strengths and embracing both. It's about giving yourself permission to take up space and prioritize your needs without guilt. One way to begin cultivating self love is replacing that negative self talk with empowering alternatives. For example, instead of thinking, I'm not good enough, try, I am learning and growing every day. If you catch yourself saying, I always mess things up, reframe it to, I do make mistakes, but that's okay. It's how I learn. These small shifts in language are powerful. They put you in the place of being able to do something. They rewire your brain for growth instead of failure. Another step is to reconnect with what brings you joy. Those activities that make you lose track of time, that fill you with belly laughter and make your heart feel full. For some, like me, it's painting or writing. For others, it's walking in nature, dancing in the living room, or curling up with a good book or a good movie. When was the last time you did something just for the joy of it? Maybe it's time to schedule a few hours to reconnect with those simple pleasures. Here's a question for you. How do you speak to yourself? Are you your own harshest critic, or can you begin to be your own biggest cheerleader? Your inner dialogue sets the tone for how others treat you, so make it a conversation rooted in compassion. Finally, self love means accepting that you are enough, just as you are, while still striving to grow. You don't need to achieve, fix, or prove anything to be worthy of love. You already are worthy. And building self love isn't an overnight journey, it's a lifelong practice. But every time we choose to be kind to ourselves, to honour our needs, and to embrace our worth, we take a step closer to the fullest version of ourselves. So I'm going to ask, what's one thing you can do today to nurture your self love? Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's saying no to something that drains you. Or maybe it's simply looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. Try it. It's worth it. So here are my final thoughts. Love isn't a fairy tale. It's not a perfect, glittering ideal, free from challenges and change. Love is complex, evolving, and often messy, but at its core, love, real love, starts with the relationship you have with yourself. As we've uncovered today, the myths we believe about love can shape how we see ourselves and others. Whether it's the idea that love is blind or that another person or partner will complete you, these stories can limit us. But when we replace those myths with truth, we open ourselves up to deeper, healthier connections. So here's my challenge to you. Reflect on one myth that has shaped your view of love. How has it impacted your relationships or your sense of self? And more importantly, how can you reframe it to create a healthier narrative? If you'd like to explore this journey further, I have something special for you. I've created a free resource to help you begin or deepen your self-love journey. It's filled with practical exercises and some reflections designed to empower you to live authentically and live wholeheartedly. To receive it, simply send me a message on social media or email me directly. I'd also love to hear from you. Which part of today's episode resonated with you the most? Do you have a story or insight to share, or maybe a question for an upcoming Q&A episode? If you're listening on Spotify, take a moment to fill out the poll. It really helps me understand what speaks to you the most. Please don't forget to like and share this episode with someone who you think might need it. And thank you for being here with me today. Remember, love isn't about perfection, it's about progress. You are worthy, whole, and capable of extraordinary love. And until next time, take care.